any second year bump that a quarterback might have comes from the second year in a system. Kirk Cousins isn't going to be going into his second year in the system because they've fired their offensive coordinator and brought in Gary Kubiak and overhauled the whole thing. Now they're overhauling it in a way to make it more familiar to him because these are guys who come from coaching trees that have used similar systems in the past. So I expect maybe a little bit of a second year bump, but I don't know if it's the same line of reasoning that Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman are using when they say that they expect the second year bump.
I'm really glad they said it because there's a lot of interesting things to talk about within it. For one, it's an admission that they weren't fully happy with what Kirk Cousins did last year. So when I get the tweets about he threw for 4,000 yards, like, well, I just heard Mike Zimmer essentially admit that it wasn't good enough when he says, well, I'm looking forward to that year 2 bump. I mean, that's a nice way of saying there's going to have to be a year 2
year
bump.
Year 1 wasn't good enough,
that's
what he's saying.
That's what he's really getting at. And I've almost been impressed with Zimmer's ability to tiptoe around the Cousins issue because he did not play well down the stretch. There's really no debate about that. Week 17, you win, you're in, and he comes up way short, not even close. And Zimmer did not blow his top on that like I think he would have with Case Keenum. I mean, that's where it's easily debunkable when you just say, oh, wait, so if free agents always get better in year 2, why didn't you keep Case Keenum? He would have been amazing.
Right.
He was great in year 1.
Why'd you let Alex Boone go?
Take you to the Super Bowl. Well, I mean, this is right. This is exactly it. Mike Remmers, was he better? No, not in year 2. I don't think Riley Reif was better in year 2. He was about the same. And I certainly don't think Alex Boone, who they had to release, was better in year 2. It's very easy to nitpick through the statement, but I don't think that it's really a statement that's meant for like harsh scrutiny to go through every single free agent to be like, oh, he's right about this one, he's wrong about this one. I think the bigger picture is the expectation is that Kirk Cousins is going to be better next year. And then my question is, how are you going to make him better? Because Kirk Cousins is exactly who he has always been, which has varied widely based on his circumstances. Last year, his circumstances were good with 2 of the best receivers in the game, but they were not perfect. And in 2016, when he was at his best, it was darn near perfect. He had 3 great wide receivers, 2 great tight ends, a receiving running back, and a Hall of Fame left tackle. And you're not going to get that for this year. But can he be better with a system that fits a little better than it did before, with another receiver, with a couple of different guards? Yeah. I
don't think you can expect the numbers to look a whole lot better, can you? You want him to be more secure with the football in terms of the fumbles. But other than that,
it's the situational stuff.
Right.
Third downs.
Exactly. And you need him to show that he can step up in the big moments. That he's
generate points.
He's not going to pee right down his leg every Monday night or Sunday night game or every game where their back's against the wall and they need a win. You need to see those intangibles from Kirk Cousins, don't you?
What's very interesting about Kirk Cousins and the way that he's judged in this situation is almost every quarterback in the league is judged in some way on winning and win-loss record. But in a lot of situations, you could look through it and say, well, okay, this guy showed potential, so we're looking forward to next year. Or this guy totally got screwed and had no chance. Josh Rosen's a good example. Rosen had no chance. Joe Montana's not winning 8 games with that Arizona Cardinals team. It's just not happening. It's the worst offensive line I think I've ever seen. And, so you look at it and you sort of judge their play and how it sort of relates to your expectation. With Cousins, he's only going to be judged on the number of wins the team gets.
Right.
Fair or not. I mean, usually QB wins in a single season is not fair because if your defense doesn't play well, you miss field goals or you get some bad bounces or injuries or whatever. But in this case, for his next 2 seasons, and especially this one where they'll have to make a decision on an extension, it's just, are you going to win 10 games? Are you going to win 12 games? Or are you going to win 8 games? And that's how he's going to be graded.
How different is the perception of Kirk Cousins? And I know this question I'm about to ask is a lot easier said than done, but how different is the perception of Kirk Cousins if he has the same exact season statistically as what he had in 2018, but the Vikings won 12 games?
Well, and that's a good question because that's how fantasy stats can fool us.
Right.
Where Kirk Cousins had the 3rd most yards when the team was trailing by 2 scores. And this matches up to what all of us saw in Chicago. You're down 22-6, and it's a miracle run to lose by 6.
Mhm.
And the same thing happened in New Orleans. A bunch of dump off passes got you to a 10-point loss, but you were down by 17 in the fourth quarter. And I would even argue that Los Angeles Rams game that people like to hold up, it was the same thing. They were up by 2 scores. He puts up some points. The Rams make a mistake, and they almost have a chance, but really they were playing from behind a lot. And this has been Kirk Cousins' MO for his entire career, has been, he puts up big stats when they're behind, but he gets them behind early in the game. So if he had 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, but a lot of it came tied or a lot of it came ahead, getting his team up in games, then, or even if it was in shootouts where you're going back and forth and you win those games, then it's going to be a lot different than what it actually was last year. So what you're going to look at, and Manny alluded to this, is, they had one of the worst 3rd and long offenses in the NFL, and that goes to your quarterback. The great quarterbacks are good on 3rd and long. I mean, all you have to do is just Google it. I mean, who shows up? Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, all the great quarterbacks good on 3rd and long, because that's when you really have to make a throw. Last year, he did not make those throws. He didn't make those plays anytime they were in 3rd and long, and they were in 3rd and long kind of a lot. So, I think that the way that I judge his performance next year will be on a lot of the underlying stats. And then I'm kind of with everyone else on how many games did you win, because they paid you to come win and not put up stats.
Like I said before, some of the names that Mike Zimmer threw out there, Terrence Newman, Captain Munnerlyn, Riley Reef, it's apples and oranges when you're talking about those guys compared to a quarterback in his second year. Courtney Cronin, and you can hear her every Tuesday here on Purple Daily and find her work at ESPN.com. She threw in, because it's so rare that you see, as I knock over my coffee mug, it's so rare that you see, there was no coffee in it, a franchise quarterback actually hit the free agent market in today's NFL. So the examples are few and far between. The two that Courtney found were Drew Brees when he went to New Orleans, and Peyton Manning when he went to Denver. First year in New Orleans for Drew Brees, 10-6, 64% completion percentage, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, a 67 QBR. Second year, he actually dropped off a little bit, had a 7-9 record. Completion percentage was a little higher at 67%, 28 touchdowns, but 18 interceptions and just a 65 QBR. It was the case with Peyton Manning that he took a second-year jump from 2012 to 2013 when he went to Denver. First year, they were 13-3, and he had a 68% completion percentage, 37 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and a 79 QBR. And then that second year in 2013, that was the big record-breaking year where they went 13-3 again, a 68% completion percentage again, but 55 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and a 79 QBR.
I really can't make much of the comparisons because it is so rare. And these two players are so much better than Kirk Cousins. They're just way more talented.
Right.
I mean, even with Drew Brees, there was some type of narrative that Drew Brees was like bad in San Diego and then didn't find it until he left, and people thought, oh, he'll be much better. I mean, you look it up. He was great in his last 2 years in San Diego. He went 20-11 with 51 touchdowns, 22 picks, a 96 quarterback rating, which at the time would have been great. 15 years ago, a 96 quarterback rating would have been great. So the only real concern with him was just whether his shoulder was going to work. And the same thing with Manning, like, is his infused neck going to hold his brain up there? Like, is that what's, but you're talking about two of the most talented players of all time. We have now a 4-year sample of Kirk Cousins being mostly the exact same quarterback, with the exact same win-loss record, with the exact same shortcomings, with the exact same highlights of things that he does.
Right.
He made some throws last year that were absolutely spectacular. The throw in Green Bay to Thielen, the throw in Philadelphia to Stephon Diggs. There was one in Green Bay to Diggs too that was a bomb right into the hands of Diggs. I mean, he has done this in Washington as well, where he has shown his accuracy, his ability to execute an offense. But what Brees and Manning don't have that he does is, you look at their seasons, and even when the supporting cast wasn't good, or sometimes in New Orleans' case, it was an atrocity. Their defense was like a war crime. And
historically bad.
Still won 7 games. I mean, like Rob Ryan as a defensive coordinator, and yet he would still force them to win some games and consistently win a lot, because they do things that Kirk Cousins isn't capable of. Cousins is what you make him. He is what you make him with the system. He is what you make him with the receivers. He is what you make him with tight ends, with running backs, with offensive line. And that's where I think for an offseason plan, if they want to prove Zimmer right, Zimmer's going to have to sacrifice some of his favorite players. That's the way I look at it. If he wants to be right about this year 2 thing, it might be Trey Waynes traded. It might be Everson Griffin traded. It might be he loves Kyle Rudolph too. It might be trying to upgrade there. But that's the only way that Kirk Cousins is going to be any better. He'll still be the same guy, but the circumstances will bring his play up.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, you can look at Mike Zimmer and say, okay, well, year two guys are better. Okay. That means Holton Hill's going to be even better, right? So you should be able to let a guy like Trey Waynes go because, well, Holton Hill's going to be better in year 2.
Well, and that would be the challenge is Zimmer, can you work around losing some of these key guys to get the most out of your defense? And I think if you dropped to maybe being instead of the 4th best defense, the 10th, you don't lose a lot there. But if you're the 19th best offense again, you're just not winning anything.
There are some quarterbacks, and Peyton Manning and Drew Brees are these guys that no matter what situation you put them in, they're going to be good unless you do everything you can possibly do to sabotage a guy's career. No matter what system or situation you put them in, they're going to be good. Then there are guys who are so bad that no matter what system or situation you put them in, they're going to be bad. And then there's everybody else in the middle. And I think that's what most quarterbacks are. I think that's what Kirk Cousins is, where they're good, but they have to be put in the right situation and the right system with the right people around them to play above their heads. They're not going to be able to do it themselves and lift a team and make them great single-handedly.
Yeah, and in general, it goes for every single team, every single quarterback. It's just what is your floor and what is your ceiling? And the ceiling on Kirk Cousins so far has still only been a 9-win season, whereas the ceiling on Peyton Manning, when he has a good Denver Broncos team around him, is 15 wins. And it's 13 wins for Drew Brees in the Super Bowl for both of them. But Cousins, at least as a member of the Vikings, did not have one of these great supporting casts around him last year. It was good. It was probably, I think, maybe like 7th to 10th for supporting casts with the wide receivers that he had.
Right.
Find me another team that has 2 top 20 wide receivers or top 15. That's going to be tough to find. And a running back who's as dynamic as Dalvin Cook. But at the same time, it wasn't perfect. And that gets us back to the main issue with signing him to the contract that they signed him to. Like, how can you make the situation perfect around him if he's going to get paid that much? And this was always an issue with Drew Brees, and where they got lucky in a lot of ways over the last couple of years and probably missed their window here a little bit with New Orleans is rookie contracts. They hit on Alvin Kamara. They hit on Mike Thomas. Oh my gosh, hit on Mike Thomas. Rookie contracts, though. And now Adam Thielen wants a new deal. And Stephon Diggs is paid. Kyle Rudolph might have to leave. You know, it becomes a very, very delicate dance. And you get to a point where it's hard to see him being a lot better because there just isn't a ton that you can do without making huge sacrifices.